And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I'm here today to cover the Rowdies, as always, for me and for my co-host, Carlos. How are you doing tonight, Carlos?
James, I'm doing pretty well. It's a nice day out here on this Tuesday evening. This weekend has been very exciting. If you are around the Georgetown area or the DC area or follow anything in the world of college basketball, you might have seen that we picked up a new coach in Ed Cooley, and it's been a really exciting time around the Georgetown basketball program, which hasn't had much excitement around it since like the 1980s. So it's been a really cool time to be around here. Campus is excited. It's been fun. Been a good time. I totally decided to go crazy this weekend and get rid of everything on my face except my mustache. So I don't know. I'm starting to grow into it, which is kind of concerning because I was just kind of doing it for fun for a little bit, but I don't know, James. I'm kind of starting to like it. It's becoming a little concerning. My girlfriend hates it. So we'll see what happens or if it lasts another couple of days or not. But anyway, James, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. No mustache forays over on this side of the world, but I do understand when your girlfriend hates it. I did have one in the past, and she did not like it either. But now we're married, so it might work out.
There you go.
But Carlos, we are here to talk about something else, a little less fun, I would actually go ahead and say. This past weekend, the Rowdies drew away 1-1 to Orange County in Southern California. So, it was kind of a drab affair, Carlos, but I think the fact that we got a point out of it actually is kind of good considering how it went. And you and I are going to discuss all of that. We also need to go over the upcoming game this weekend and preview our away trip to Charleston. So we'll do that as well. In the RBLR Rowdies Cup, Carlos, we are all blowing it out of the park right now because currently there is only one person with 1 point. 2 games in, and we are only that far in. I will say that I have the point, but it's not very pretty at this point.
Yeah, you know what, it happens. I think not to save. I'll save all my commentary about this game for a little bit. Oh, I'm on 2 sides of the screen. Check this out. But yeah. I definitely had higher expectations for how, these first couple of games were going to go. It happens. It's early in the season. We've talked about this a lot. Teams starting to gel, but it is what it is. You know what? As I'm usually going to roll with the Rowdies when it comes to predictions, which means I'm usually going to pick wins. So you know what? I'll get hot when the Rowdies get hot. We ride or die together, right?
Yes, that is a good way to put it, and I'll leave that to you because my prediction at this point is not so rosy. But we will get to all of that in the future of this episode. So, please, obviously, if you are tuning in, please like and subscribe to our podcast. We are on YouTube, Facebook, and I was going to go Facebook and Spotify. Those two similar things, but we are on YouTube. We're on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, everything. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so on. So please like and subscribe, follow us, everything you can. We are there, including everything, whether or not they are social media or a podcast place, but we're there.
Yeah.
So, Carlos, let's now move past all that. Let's actually get started with what we're trying to talk about here. Can you go through the quick review of our 1-1 draw?
Yeah. Like you said, this past Saturday night, we stayed up late with the Rowdies. Your Tampa Bay Rowdies had a 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time kickoff out in Orange County. We lined up with Breno in goal, Jordan Doherty, Kleeman, and Lasso, with Guillen kind of making up our back line. Then Armin, Sebastian Dahlgaard, Erivo, and Charlie Dennis made up our midfield unit with the same starting attack from last week in Cal Jennings and J.J. Williams. The Rowdies did give up a goal pretty early in the game. Oh, not that early. Came close to halftime at about the 40th minute. And that's about all the action that we saw in the first half. Like you said, James, a pretty boring affair for the casual fan. This might be one of the games that your coworker who hates soccer is going to be like, why doesn't anybody watch the sport? It's pretty stupid. It's boring. That's what it felt like this half. Rowdies did come back eventually with a pretty late goal. That was a header from Ervo on a corner. I'm forgetting who knocked it along to him.
Cal Jennings.
Cal Jennings, that's right. Yeah, definitely a nice goal to watch. But again, about the only excitement there. There were a lot of subs going into the second half, and including some, pretty surprising ones, which I think I'll save for my commentary on this game later today. Lewis Hilton was still missing and will continue to possibly be missing as the Rowdies let us know that he is still questionable for this weekend's upcoming game. And Felix Schroeder made his debut for the Tampa Bay Rowdies in about the 80th minute in this game. So that was a really, really, I don't know, maybe a little highlight of the game, seeing one of our new guys make his debut. Despite all of this and maybe the not so great performance of our team, James, Aaron Guillen and Charlie Dennis did both make the USL Team of the Week. Congratulations to them. And as you noted here, possibly the most exciting thing to happen this game, apart from that Rowdies goal, which honestly was pretty exciting, was the presence of a bunny that made its appearance in the game randomly, notably a few minutes before the Rowdies goal. Who knows? Maybe that was a little bit of luck and kickstart that we needed to get our offense going. So that was fun. Little bunny appearance at the end. Rowdies goal to tie the game late. It is what it is, James. I think we can both confidently say that we were underwhelmed by this performance and are looking for much more coming up. So let's just jump into that, right, James? Let's jump into the questions, the analysis, what was going on in this game. So the Rowdies switched things up in the first half from our game against Indy. Again, early in the season, Neil Collins experimenting, trying to figure out what the right lineup is, what the right formation, what the right approach is. Maybe it varies from opponent to opponent. But how did this particular switch up from the Indy game to this Orange County game go? How do you think it went?
Yeah, so in this game, we mostly saw the Rowdies lining up in a 4-4-2 formation. And that was a little interesting because obviously the first game we did not necessarily do that, but it was a pretty rigid 4-4-2 against OC, and I think that it ultimately actually did not pay off for us, which is, always what you want to hear. But yeah, one thing that I noticed from the first half and then carrying into the second half was frequently one player that we highlighted from last week, Kyle Scott, he was getting into these open positions on the field that seemed to be in a lot of space behind our two central midfielders. So our two central midfielders in the first half were Zach Haribo and Charlie Dennis. And then in the second half, it was actually Doherty and Haribo who switched positions. And you saw Haribo lining up as a right back more frequently, which I thought was interesting, but maybe Neil Collins was just trying to switch things out. Anyway, I did notice that frequently, like I said, Kyle Scott was behind them. He would get the ball after one of their center backs, kind of just carried the ball through our two central attackers, and then he would find Kyle Scott or someone in the middle, and that person would then be able to draw people into him with the ball, and he would spray it outwards so that he could try and find someone like Milan Olowski or the like. Now, going on Twitter, I was also able to pick up from the ever-present mind and the very gracious co-host, John Morrissey of USL Tactics. He pointed out that not only was it just that the opposing team's center backs were able to take the ball forward and then draw players to him, where he could then pass the ball to Kyle Scott in the middle, but it was also that Milan Olowski was playing as a truly dedicated winger. So he was pulling our center backs out and leaving a lot of space in between our two center backs and our two central midfielders. So the block of four of them, as it is, this is all five fingers, but let's just say that it's four. They would be split up, and it would be very large distances between them where Kyle Scott would sit. Good little demonstration from my hands there. But yeah, that was a big problem, and it ultimately did lead to a couple of chances, including the goal that we saw Orange County score. Emil Nielsen, he was the guy who ultimately ended the play for Orange County, but it started with what I thought it was Marcus Nakim from Orange County, but according to USL Tactics, it was Danny Fox, their other center back, who was able to carry the ball forward. So my notes were wrong there, but it was still the same principle. And he was able to find Kyle Scott. Kyle Scott, again, everybody kind of converged on him, and he was able to find a runner in space out on the right wing. If I'm not mistaken, that was Milanowski, and then Emil Nielsen put it away. So, yeah, that pattern unfortunately did not really dissipate in the second half. Like I said, Jordan Doherty and Zach Erebos switched spots, but yeah, I didn't see too much. I didn't see. It was better. I will say it was better. I think that Jordan Doherty did a better job in the midfield, but he didn't do the job that we need either. So, yeah, it was not exactly our best performance, and it didn't seem like it was a huge improvement against our game versus Indy, but maybe we were a little bit crisper with passing. I think that our possession did look a lot nicer, at least in this one. We didn't have so many balls that just went crazy and, completely to no one.
Yeah. I think it's a fair question to ask, like, if this was a better performance or a worse performance than against Indy. And I'm kind of torn. I'm back and forth on that, in part because I feel that this Orange County team is a not insignificant drop-off from the team we played against versus Indy. I think Indy is a pretty clearly better team than Orange County is, and it's kind of unfortunate to see that. I think we were pretty clearly outplayed against Orange County. They created more chances. They had more shots in the box. They had more possession. Like they very definitely should have come out with 3 points. And I don't think that's unfair to say. Our goal was off of a corner kick, a set piece. And that was essentially all we created throughout the game. We maybe had like one other good chance. And I say good in air quotes, really. Like we weren't really creating anything. And if you go back and look at, the highlights from this game, it's really just like chance after chance for Orange County. And credit to Breno. I mean, honestly, I was a little worried about this when I saw he started against Indy. I was very much looking forward to the Connor Sparrow experience, and was a little concerned when I saw Breno was coming back and starting. That being said, I mean, he's played pretty well. He made a couple like really, really big saves that kept us in the game, with the help, of course, of guys like Aaron Guillen, who I think notably made essentially like a goal line stop, with his head. So that was pretty helpful. But Breno also made that crazy save like late in the half, that was going up for the top left corner. If you recall that, I forgot who took that shot. It might have been Iloski, now that I mentioned it, because I remember him having a few decent chances and just not being able to put them away. Breno really, really robbed him more than a few times. So yeah, I think it's generally concerning, but I'll reference what I said last week. It's still pretty early in the season. It's the second game of the season. This is a very new team in terms of the difference that we've had in the past couple of seasons of continuity from like the same core that we've had. There's a lot more different style players and newer players on this team that we didn't have last year, guys that need to really gel together. We had a full preseason, but still, these are a lot of new players that have to gel together for the first time in the regular season game last week. I was a little hopeful that the Cal Jennings, JJ Williams attack would kind of click this week, because they're really, really talented players. We know that they both have incredible individual talent. I'm just waiting for them to find that talent together, right? And once that happens, it's going to be a really, really scary thing for any team to play, because they're both so good. But again, I think it's fair to say that I was incredibly underwhelmed by both of their performances. They didn't really show up. I think it was Cal Jennings that was subbed off at the 45th minute. Or, sorry, was it JJ Williams? Let me go back and check. One of our forwards was subbed off at halftime and replaced by Ariel Martinez. It was JJ Williams who got subbed off. And Ariel Martinez played the rest of the game. And I love him as a player. I did not think he was going to be a full 45-minute player kind of guy, especially on this game where, we needed some energy injected into the team and needed a goal, obviously. Again, he's a fun player to watch. I don't recall him really creating anything in his time on the field. So it was a lot of players that we have high expectations for that just didn't really show up, if that makes any sense. Maybe it sounds like I'm being too harsh on them. I'm not trying to. It just feels like a lot of our star power that we talked a lot about over the preseason was kind of invisible. And again, it's we can still use the excuse of it being pretty early on in the season. So it's not all that, doomsday to me yet, if that makes any sense. So I don't know. I usually tend to try and turn a positive spin on things like this. And I think that's the positive spin there, again, is that it's early. Our attack needs some time to gel. Maybe even our midfield too. Our midfield, especially without Lewis Hilton, is trying to find its identity. I think Zach Areville in particular is somebody that has a lot of potential to, I think, from what I've seen and what I understand of him, he has a lot of potential to create a lot of chances in the attack, even though he's mostly a defensive midfielder. Like, if you recall, I think he single-handedly stopped a goal against Orange County this past weekend, coming in from behind and slide tackling to deflect the ball out of bounds on a one-on-one opportunity. So he had a fantastic game as well, in that sense. But it's like with the midfield's also missing something without Lewis Hilton. Missing the guy that kind of controls everything, creates everything, puts some calm into offensive creation. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. If Lewis Hilton comes back, that would be huge, and I think it genuinely would make a big difference in terms of creating opportunities for Cal Jennings and JJ Williams, because right now I feel like they're kind of just on an island, not doing much of anything. And again, maybe it's not entirely their fault. It's probably not entirely their fault. There's just no opportunities for them, really. And it's kind of sad because there's a lot of opportunity. They have so much potential to just put up insane goal numbers, especially Cal Jennings. So I'm just waiting for that to happen. Who knows? Maybe, I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe it's just the Lewis Hilton thing. Maybe it all comes back to that one injury right now.
I would definitely like that to be the case, because I think that it would make things easier for us to get into the next phase where we're hopefully, going to start winning and such. But so Carlos, you went over this a little bit, but with the changes that we made at halftime and everything, did you see a difference in the second half? I think I've already kind of said what I was thinking, where I didn't see too much of a difference either. Did you see that it got maybe noticeably better, maybe it didn't, maybe even noticeably worse? Just a quick question on what we tried to do to change things around, and maybe we didn't get there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think I'm gonna defer to your answer that there wasn't really anything particularly noticeable. I thought the Dayon Harris sub was going to create a lot more for us. I think Dayon Harris for Jake Arman seemed like a pretty good substitution at the time. Dayon Harris adds a certain level of dynamic talent and offensive creativity that Jake Arman might not have. So I thought that was an okay sub. Again, there just really wasn't anything there. We didn't create much. Once we got that corner, we scored that goal. But apart from that, we had, I think I can say we had a little bit more possession than we had in the first half. Maybe, but I don't have any stats to back that up right now. It's just, I don't know. Connor Antley for Freddie Kleeman in the 70th minute seems like it makes sense. Kind of a defensive midfielder for a defender, try and create more opportunities, have Connor Antley come in and inject a little bit of life in that defensive midfield area. Felix Schroeder for Dahlgaard also seems like it makes sense in the 80th minute to throw in another striker in there and try and create something. It's always a little confusing for me to try and keep up with, because Neil Collins has a lot of these players that can play in different positions. So it always feels like he's moving people around constantly throughout the game. And that's good. That's a good thing to have. maybe it makes it tough for like continuity's purpose, to have players like constantly in different areas of the field. But I don't know. I'm not the professional soccer coach. So I don't know. It seemed like all the subs generally made sense, right? I think those were the 4 second half subs I mentioned. That being said, nothing really came out of it in terms of quality of play. Ariel Martinez is probably the one that surprised me the most, coming in that early. I mentioned him a lot, or not a lot. I mentioned him for a few minutes last week and talked about how fun he is to watch and how he's an electric player and is willing to take on players one-on-one, take on 3 players by himself and create goals. I wasn't expecting him to see him that early at the start of the second half. I thought when I saw Dayon Harris warming up, I figured we would see Dayon Harris for one of the forwards, and kind of see Dayon Harris slide into that striker role that he's been playing more often than not. But Neil Collins seemed to slide into that winger role that he played. He plays more regularly last year. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's really Neil just kind of cooking his game plan. He has a really dynamic player in Dayon that he can move either as striker or midfielder or the wing spot. But in this particular game, I guess he felt that Dayon for Armin was the sub. And I don't know, like I can't really find issue with any of these subs. You know what I mean? Like none of them seem particularly questionable.
No, I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, Ariel Martinez was maybe surprising, but not questionable. He's a great striker, and I think he was a fantastic. It seemed like a good sub. Maybe, I don't know. Mkosana's been on the bench. Maybe he could have done something in the late minutes that Felix Schroeder might not have been able to. But I know too little about Felix Schroeder to really make that judgment call. So it just seems like whatever our game plan was, we weren't executing it. So that was a really long-winded answer to say. The second half plan, whatever it was, like it didn't seem unreasonable, but it just wasn't there. So I don't know. I didn't see much of a. If there was an improvement in the second half, it was marginal, right?
Yeah.
Nothing crazy.
Yeah. No, I tend to agree. I think that I already said pretty much that, but you flesh out a bit more and. With where all of the different players who came on ultimately went, but maybe didn't make all the impact that we needed then.
Right.
The final question that we have before the man of the match question, Carlos, for me is, I think that we also already did say this. Were the Rowdies kind of lucky to get out of there with a point? I would say so, but do you think that, along those lines, is there like an early narrative forming? And I want to give a little more context to this question that, with John Morrissey, who we've already talked about. He is at USL Tactics on Twitter, but in addition to that, he writes for Backheeled, and I appreciate that somebody is covering USL like he does, but unfortunately, I have not subscribed to Backheeled. There are so many soccer subscriptions that I already have. I have not gotten around to doing that one yet, so apologies, John, but I was not able to read the article that included his take on the Rowdies, but he did say, at least in the preview for it, it was called "Is the Trouble in Tampa Bay Real?" And so that's kind of what I'm getting at here, Carlos. Is this something that you see a problem with so far, or is this kind of just a new team is starting to gel? After the first game, when we had the press conference there, Neil Collins said that when he thought the performance wasn't good enough, this was the time to start working on the team, their relationships with each other and make sure everybody works out properly. But it was a little odd for me just because I was like, I thought that's what preseason was for. And I don't want to be too flippant about that because it's, hard to do with a shortened preseason like we would have in USL, and especially with the players coming in when they do. But yeah, I was a little taken aback by that. So what do you think in terms of the narrative that is kind of coalescing around this team, whether that's in what little media we have and what little and good media we have, or the fans, or maybe opposition fans even.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for narratives. I love narratives. I love storylines. Like, I'm a student journalist at Georgetown for a reason because I love writing about things like this. But I think it's so early. Like I don't buy it yet. You know what I mean? I've seen those tweets. I saw that headline or that wording, like, is the trouble real in Tampa Bay? It very well might be, right? I'm not saying it's not, but I think it's way too early to like even like really ask that question, right? I mean, it's such a stacked team talent wise.
Yeah.
And we have such a proven coach at this point. Like there's no reason that we shouldn't eventually start performing and performing at like a championship caliber, not just like, playoff caliber, like a championship caliber. So like there might be a narrative like developing, you can ask the question if you want. But I don't really buy it yet, if that makes any sense. I'm not sold on it. I think I'm going to, again, defer to what I've been saying. It's early. I understand like we've had preseason, but again, this is a really new team, a team in terms of the USL that has really high expectations. A guy like Cal Jennings is coming from a team that had the opposite of high expectations, had like as low expectations as you could possibly have in Las Vegas.
It's a whole new culture.
Yeah, I mean, you're going literally from I think the worst team in the league last year, right? Were they like actually bottom? I don't know.
If they weren't, it was New York or something, but I think they were just about there.
Either the worst or second worst, or at best third worst, if I'm if I'm totally wrong, to a team that was in the USL Championship final a couple seasons ago, and Eastern Conference champion the season before that, when COVID was around, and a team that has a regular expectation at this point of success. So I think that takes I mean, you can say whatever you want about like second division soccer in the US and whether that like pressure is even like real, but like when you're playing this for a living and this is like what you're trying to make it in, right, as a career, I'm sure that pressure feels a lot more real than it does, for us casual fans on Twitter. So it is a different culture for guys like Cal Jennings. I don't want to use him as, kind of like my example, but it makes the most sense for a guy like him who's coming from, frankly, a losing culture in Las Vegas. So who knows? I mean, there's a lot to take into account in terms of why we're not performing at the level we might have expected already. Injuries, Leo Fernandez obviously is the lingering big name that'll be on the season. People adjusting to a new team. I don't know, maybe just lots of high expectations and pressure that might be getting to some of the players. Like, I don't know. I say that last point with a grain of salt. I'm not sure I really mean that. I'm just kind of throwing out these narratives that might be out there already, and saying that, again, way too early to really buy into any of it, in my opinion. You might disagree with me, and fans on Twitter might be getting a little rowdy about this already and getting a little concerned, and justifiably so. But I think we can rest assured that it's very, very early, and we have a proven coach, like I said, Neil Collins. So I'm not concerned, really. I think it'll get back on track sooner rather than later.
All right. Well, I do like to hear that. Carlos, these are already out on Twitter, but people listening might not have seen that. Or if they did, they might want to know why. Would you please tell us who your man of the match was for this game?
Yeah, my man of the match was easily Aaron Guillen. He had a fantastic game on the back line, obviously shutting down a ton of opportunities. Phil Brenna very much needed his help, and I like giving defenders credit, especially when they get things like a goal line clearance, which is like practically the equivalent of a goal for a defender at that point. Like that one play might make him like man of the match by itself, just because it kept the game level in a way that a Phil Brenna like save is like obviously important, but like a Guillen goal line clearance is just like a momentum changer type thing. Really drains something out of Orange County that just a normal save might not. And on top of that, he just played a good game, shut down a ton of opportunities. He's so like overlooked when it comes to his speed, James. I mean, he's really quick, and people never really take that into consideration for whatever reason. I never really see discussion about his speed when it comes to like his talent, but it should be like something that's discussed a lot more because, especially for his size, really, really quick player, keeping up with the youngest guys out there and the guys that are maybe much more known for their speed. So yeah, for that reason, Aaron Guillen, my man of the match, played a fantastic game, saved a goal single-handedly, and I think clearly, in my opinion, was the best player on the field for the Tembe Rowdies.
Yeah, I think that he probably really went to earning that captain's armband, like in this game in particular. But I did not go with Aaron Guillen as much as I might have liked to. I do also like to vote for defenders, but for this one, I went to the other side of the defense for Jordan Doherty. I went with him last week, but I stuck with him again this week because he was not stellar. I will say that. I don't think that he was, incredibly outstanding, but what I think he did was a serviceable job in the defense. And then when you look at the problem that we identified earlier in this episode, where one of the Orange County defenders was able to step forward, usually split our attackers, and then when the two central midfielders would converge on him, he would split them with the ball and find Kyle Scott in the middle. That was over and over in the first half, so I think that Jordan Doherty stepping into the central midfield to try and kind of prevent that from continuing, he did a good job. He did not do the best job, but he did a very good job at it. And ultimately, as many chances as Orange County might have had in the second half, it wasn't as many through Kyle Scott's feet. And I think that in large part comes down to him. So that was my choice for man of the match. And that was why. Carlos, thank you for offering yours as well. Before we move into our preview for the game against Charleston Battery, I do want to say, of course, liking and subscribing to our show is free, and we appreciate when you do that. But if you might want to help our show just a little bit more, we would also appreciate you doing that by checking out our shop. We are at shop.rblrsports.com, and if you go there now, you can use the promo code COYR to get 10% off your order. And please do check it out. We've got a lot of really cool designs there, and I think that you will find one that you like if you do so. There is stuff for the Rays, the Bucks, the Lightning, and of course the Tampa Bay Rowdies, and stuff in all sorts of colors as well. Check it out, and we will see you in it, hopefully, at Al Lang Stadium. Now, Carlos, we have a game against Charleston Battery coming up this weekend.
That we do.
Can you get us into the basic outline of it, and then we'll try and break it down a little bit more for what this means in terms of narratives and tactics, all that good stuff.
Narratives, I love it. This upcoming weekend, your Tampa Bay Rowdies travel to the Charleston Battery. I don't know why I said the Miami FC in my head, clearly. On Saturday, the Rowdies travel to play them, and Charleston are another team that has opened up their season with 2 1-1 draws in their 2 first games. They drew against Phoenix Rising at home in their opening game. As we know, Phoenix is a really solid team, definitely an impressive performance. And they drew 1-1 away to Sacramento. Again, very impressive. Sacramento, a really solid team. Charleston did a good job out there, pulled out a point in California. It's a revamped team from last season. We've talked a lot about them over the preseason because I see a lot of potential in this club, in this squad in particular, with Lee Cohen taking over the ship over there in Charleston. But their 2 points leaves them in 6th place in the East, which is 1 spot higher than we are. Again, table positions might not mean much this early, but just to reference it at this point, Charleston 6th place in the East after 2 games. In both their games, they've lined up in what's shaped up roughly to a 4-3-3 formation. Many of the same players, virtually the same lineups. This included Muse, Dodson, former Georgetown Hoya, shout out him, Archer, Patterson, Wynn, Allen, Booth, Ikaza, Markinich, Williams, and Barajas. They made the same 3 subs so far, and they have some dangerous players, including, again, Barajas, Augie Williams, a really, really, really powerful player we should be keeping an eye on, and Traeger, all very tricky players to watch. Yeah. What they'll try to do is generally rely on their wingers. We'll have to cover that up more here in this preview as we chat about it a little bit more. I know, James, you're working on a preview of your own. Everybody keep an eye out for that. Yeah, so a lot to talk about. I mean, Charleston is a pretty interesting team, a lot of talent on this squad. Yeah, I mean, I hyped them up a lot over the preseason. I think I've mentioned them maybe too much just because of the Lee Cohen narrative. Yeah, I think we can call this the Lee Cohen Derby. I'm excited. It should be a good game, James. I think Charleston's a solid team, like I've mentioned. I'll say my prediction. What do you have to say? What's going on here? We got Charleston this weekend. Where are your thoughts ahead of this game before we jump into the predictions?
Yeah, so I should say our notes include that they line up in a 4-3-3. It is more akin to a 4-2-3-1, and it is a very distinct 4-2-3-1. So I was watching the game that they played this past weekend versus Sacramento Republic, and they went out there and they kind of took the game to Sacramento Republic. It was another actually really weird game in terms of the officiating. So I do want to say that Charleston got the benefit of 2 crazy yellow cards, in my opinion, that sent Luis Felipe off with a red. But I'm not here to, try and relitigate something that doesn't actually impact our game necessarily. So, yeah, with everything that they lined up, the biggest aspect of their attack for me was trying to involve their 2 wingers, Fidel Barajas on the left wing and Anthony Markanich. I think it's Nicholas Markanich, sorry, on the right. There are 2 Markanich twins. But yeah, I think it's Nicholas who is the one that's on the right. So Nick Markanich was drafted to MLS last year. He played with Cincinnati in MLS, but mostly with their MLS Next Pro team. So he did pretty well there, and then he ended up dropping down a division from MLS to the championship, where he will be obviously lining up with Charleston for the majority of this year. Fidel Barajas, on the other hand, is actually a Sacramento youth area product. I think that he was in the San Jose Earthquakes Academy. Regardless of that, he is no longer there.
Old.
Yeah, he is no longer there, obviously. He wanted to join the USL so that he could get regular playing time at a high level. And I think that he's doing that as opposed to playing in the MLS Academy or the MLS Next Pro division. So he was part of the Mexico U17 squad that just won the U17 CONCACAF Championship. And the overall player of the tournament, I think, should have been Fidel Barajas. It was another Mexican player, but that's not my decision, so I won't relitigate that one either. Regardless, these are 2 very dangerous players. They are both very good on the dribble. They are both pretty smart, and they know how to, they know when to pass the ball. They know when they have enough space to try and take somebody on and beat them, and frequently they will. So we kind of need to worry about making sure that they are covered at all times, while also making sure that the central attacker that they're trying to find, Augie Williams, all 3 of those guys kind of need to be covered. So I don't know if that means going with 4 at the back so that you always have somebody on Williams and somebody who can step out to the right if it's with your left winger, or somebody who's always on Williams and someone who can step out to the left if it is with the other side. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the option is there, and I don't know exactly what Neil Collins will want to do with it. But what I will say about those 2 wingers also is that I think that they kind of offer us a little bit of an option in terms of trying to create our own attack. I don't think that either of them are the best at tracking back, at least not at this point in their career. I'm sure Fidel Barajas, like you said, 16 years old, he's got a lot to learn. But when you're 16, you have a tendency to turn off every so often. And if you turn off in a game against a bunch of pros, you are likely to get burned, and I'm hopeful that we are the ones who can do that burning. So I would like us to actually, go out and beat them, and, it would be better than Charleston and Tampa Bay being teams that sit on 1-1 draws for three games in a row. But, we'll see how it goes. I would also like to see us potentially try and get some isolated attacks against their two center backs. So in the offseason, Charleston signed AJ Cochran. He is a USL championship vet. He was with Indy 11, I believe, this past year. And in other seasons, he was also with El Paso, if I'm not mistaken. And then he had some time in MLS before that. But he's another good player. If he ends up playing the center back role, then, this might be a little different. But at this point, they were going with those two center backs that you already mentioned, and I don't think that these are two of the best center backs in the league. I'm very sorry to say that for Leland Archer and AJ Patterson, but I don't think that they are necessarily just the best guys out there in those positions. So if we continue to do what we did actually versus Indy 11, where we were trying to isolate our strikers, JJ Williams and Cal Jennings, versus their center backs, I think that we would have a better shot at succeeding here than we did against Indy 11. When we did that with Indy, it turned out that we made the Cuban defender, Adrian Dispay, we made him look like a fantastic player. But honestly, I don't think that Leland Archer or AJ Patterson are quite up to the same level. I think that they're good players. Obviously, you're not going to get to this, league and be a starter without being a good player. But I just don't think they're on the same page as Adrian Dispay, for instance. And in front of them, additionally, I would say that Chris Allen and Andy Booth offer a little bit of vulnerability as well. They are both, pretty hard workers, and I would say possibly even more so for Booth. I think that they, though, do not offer all of the, they're not the best in this position either. They're good. It's the same thing really with Archer and Patterson. I think that these two, Booth and Allen, are good, and they're not going to be the best ones that you ever come up against. So we have the potential to either put Charlie Dennis as a number 10 and kind of distract both Allen and Booth, or if we can just set it up a little bit differently, then maybe we can get it so that Jennings and JJ Williams are sitting up against both of their center backs, and they can get themselves a little separation. They can, kind of bully those guys off the ball and get themselves a couple of shots, and hopefully those will go in. It's also going to be interesting because there's one more thing I wanted to mention, and that is Hanwala Bwana, another player for Charleston Battery who has not played for them yet. I didn't hear in the broadcast whether or not he was out injured or if he was injured for a long time. I didn't hear anything, so I really don't know if he's just ready to make his debut at any given time. He hasn't been on the bench yet, but we shall see. It's interesting to know that this guy is around because he is a good player and he can, influence games, but otherwise he'll have to rely on those two wingers that I talked about, and Emilio Icaza, who is actually a St. Petersburg native. Went to USF for 2 years and then ultimately joined the pro division. So, all of that is to say Augie Williams is going to be an important person in this match, and we are going to have to really shut down service to him, and that is our biggest thing.
Right. He is a fantastic player. We know that. We've seen what he can do against us. Can pretty much single-handedly take over the game and put in a goal against anybody, no matter who's on our back line, whether it's Forrest Lasso or not, right?
Yeah.
So definitely have to trust more than anything, our defensive midfielders to break up any sort of, chance of him even getting the ball, I think is the best way to do that. So we'll see if we can execute that, or if that's even the game plan. I don't know. Maybe Neil Collins is a different mode of dealing with him. So we'll see what he can do. In terms of mentioning, you mentioned a player who maybe has gone under the radar for not playing. I'll mention one more player that Charleston Battery has that may have gone under the radar because he hasn't started yet, and that's Dante Polvara. Also went to Georgetown. Very insanely talented central midfielder. He won the Herman Trophy in 2021, which is the equivalent of the Heisman, if anybody watches college football, for the best college soccer player in the country that year. Just insanely talented, really tall, 6'1" in the central midfield, a Aravo type player. Dante comes from Aberdeen. He's on loan from Aberdeen right now. Fantastic player. I expect him to be getting more minutes, possibly even a start sometime soon. Maybe that comes against us. He's somebody we are going to struggle to deal with if he gets minutes, because he can do a little bit of everything, which is why he was so dangerous and such like a highly touted player. He can get up, he can get back, he can get on the end of headers. He's really like one of the most all-around players you'll see in the USL. So we'll have to keep an eye out for him as well. At least I know I will. He's fantastic, and I'm sure he's going to create problems for us if he gets on the field. That being said, James, I think we've exhausted the knowledge we both share about the Charleston Battery, their tactics, their potential lineup, and what we think they might try to do against us. We have all that out there. With that being said, what are our predictions? What do you got for this weekend's game?
Yeah, so let's do our predictions. I do also want to say, everyone listening, the RBLR Rowdies Cup is based on our predictions here, so we still need to know what the victor's prize will be. If you have suggestions, please send those in. We are looking for some good ones, and they can be funny, or they can be as simple as some Iron Brew. But yeah, so Carlos, I actually am going to go. Unfortunately, I think that with the writing on the wall as it is, I'm going to have to say that it's going to be a 2-1 win for the Battery.
Boo. I think that's going to be the first L prediction of the new season from either one of us.
I think so.
Okay, good to know. Again, I'm going to be the eternal optimist and say we come out with a 1-0 win. Again, Charleston has a lot in terms of offensive creativity. Just, one decent look from Augie Williams. Next thing you know, they have a goal. But I think at this point, we've played him enough times. We've seen his style enough times. We know, who's dangerous. We know what they're going to try to do. I don't think there's not going to be any surprises, is what I mean. So, and with the quality we have in our back line and generally the quality we have in our defensive midfield, knowing that, I think we can pull out a shutout, which I think is more bold than me predicting the win. But I think I take it back. I'm a little concerned about whether our offense can actually produce anything right now. So I might say I'm more confident about potentially getting a shutout than scoring a goal. If that's, maybe that's a negative sign of where we're at right now. But I think it's just kind of the reality of things. So I'm going to say we don't score more than one goal at most. Who knows? Hopefully one of these guys up top get things going with a goal here. We get that 1-0 win with another stellar performance from our back line and maybe another man of the match type performance from Guillen. Who knows?
It could well be. The last two predictions that we have are from producer Eureka, and he has predicted a 1-1 draw. And the guest predictor for this week is Matt Cox, previously of Unused Substitutes and now of Tampa Bay Soccer. That is at Tampa Bay_soccer. His guess is also a 2-1 loss. So I guess the two of us are hedging our bets here, but we'll see how it turns out. Now, Carlos, let's get into extra time here. Obviously, this game will be on ESPN Plus this weekend, and it will be at 7:30. Keep an eye out for watch parties. I haven't seen anything necessarily announced at this point, but hopefully there will be something along those lines coming up. Lewis Hilton is still questionable, as we talked about, so we're not sure exactly how it's looking for him right now, and we don't know what that means for the team and how they're going to line up. It would obviously be beneficial if he came back, but it will, it'll just have to be, it'll just have to be, how it goes moving forward. I'm not too sure. And then, I want to say here just a couple of quick notes for the international side. The U.S. men's national team is getting started on their final Nations League games for this cycle, I guess, before the actual championship. And keep an eye out on that. There will be all sorts of international soccer on television. You can catch, I think, at least the European games and the all the CONCACAF Nations League games are going to be on Paramount Plus. I know that I will be tuning in. And then the other thing that I want to note for this is there's a Rowdy who will be taking part in the Nations League, and that is Cuba's own Michael Rosarena. Congratulations to him. He made his debut back in November, and now I don't know if he will actually be a starter or not. I guess we'll have to see, but I will actually definitely be trying to tune in for these Cuba games because I'm a sicko for international soccer. I watch the worst games you can find, but that's not the Cuba game necessarily. It won't be the worst game you can find. I would like to see a Rosarena do well, and we'll see how it turns out for him.
Yeah.
Carlos, if you could take us through these last bits here, because I'm not sure what the last one listed is.
Well, first of all, Bill Hamid signing for Memphis. What's up with that? That is out of left field. Quite literally for Memphis, who plays on a baseball field. Literally out of left field, Bill Hamid. Where the hell did that come from? Good for them, I guess. I mean, that was so random.
I think it's just because he and Tim Howard are like good friends from training with the national team together, and Tim Howard owns Memphis partially.
Right. It's the only link that I could see would make some sense. Maybe Bill Hamid, I mean, it's kind of sort of on the back end of his career. I don't know what else to say about that. Memphis has lost their first 2 games of the season. One to a team I'll mention here in a second, just because I think it's a really interesting storyline early on in the season. And also to Pittsburgh, they lost 3-1 at home. They've lost their first 2 games of the season at home. The team they lost to in the first game of the season, I mentioned last week. I want to mention them again, James, because we're never going to see this again. Loudoun United FC is in 3rd place in the Eastern Conference. Soak it in. Everybody drink it in. Take your screenshots right now. You're never going to see this again. Loudoun United FC is in 3rd place. Stop the count. Get them in the playoffs. I'm all in on Loudoun United being good. It's just the funniest timeline for me because this is a team that is not supposed to be good, but they kind of sort of just got taken over by an independent-ish owner.
So, we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe they're actually investing in the potential good, product on the field for residents of the area to be proud of and whatnot. But I mean, I wanted to mention them because obviously they beat Memphis away in that first game of the season. And then they drew this past weekend, which might not be that notable, but it's the team that they drew against, which was reigning, defending champion San Antonio FC. Pretty, consensus the best team in the league right now. And they drew 1-1 at home. And for a little bit of time outplayed them. I think San Antonio created more, but Loudoun United should never, be forcing San Antonio to drop points in any matchup they play. Worth mentioning, I just think it's a really curious storyline. I think it's something to watch out for to see if they're actually half decent or if this is just a random spell of inspired soccer from this new squad in Loudoun United. Really interesting. Would be really funny if they're actually kind of good. I think it's just the funniest storyline worth keeping an eye on because if they're good, James, I mean, it kind of changes the dynamic of what the Eastern Conference is, right? It's usually free points for whoever plays against them. So we'll have to see if this is something real or just inspired soccer.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that is a good note to end on. Thank you, Carlos, for keeping us up to date because I saw that note and I was like, well, I'm not sure where this is going, but yeah. All right. Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in. That will do it for us this week. And please follow RBLR Sports again on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, anywhere that you are, we are too. Please also follow me if you'd like on Twitter. I am at RBLR James K. And Carlos, what about you?
At Carlos CPA 10 on Twitter. I've exclusively been tweeting about the Ed Cooley news in Georgetown basketball for the past 24 hours. It's been insane. So don't follow me if you don't want to see any of that because it's been just a crazy 24 hours for my Twitter feed. If you do, eventually I'll start tweeting about the Rowdies again. And by eventually, I mean tomorrow or later today. So we'll be back to our regularly scheduled show. And yeah, come drop a follow. Always feel free to ask James or I any questions for the show with hashtag AskRBLR. And we'll be sure to bring up your questions in the next week's episode.
Yeah, we love getting those. So please let us know. And of course, like and subscribe to our podcast. We are on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app. We are on Apple and Google Podcasts. We are on all major podcast platforms. And most importantly, now with this broadcast, we are on YouTube. So please tune in there and everywhere you get podcasts. For another week in the bag. Yes, for another week in the bag and another game coming up. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.